In the beginning, no one noticed. The world was already too loud. Sirens, arguments, endless news broadcasts all drowned out the silence. The dead began to walk, but not like in the movies. They moved through streets and malls with empty hands and slow, deliberate steps. Their mouths moved, but there were no screams, no growls. Adults saw monsters, imagined hunger, and heard only groans or nothing at all. But the children heard words. The voices weren't shouts or whispers. They were like a calm wind that slipped past all the noise and fear, settling right behind their eyes. The first one to speak up was a 9-year-old boy named Eli. He was on a school bus stuck in traffic when he saw a man walking slowly on the sidewalk. Eli turned to his teacher and asked, "Why is that man apologizing for being late?" The teacher, confused, asked what he meant. "He says he used to take this bus every morning," Eli explained. "He says he doesn't want to scare us, but he needs us to listen." His teacher pulled him away from the window, scolding him for making up scary stories. But later that night, Eli cried, not from fear, but because the man's voice had sounded so tired, so kind, and so deeply worried. Soon, more children started repeating strange phrases, warnings spoken by the unmoving mouths of figures at the edge of playgrounds and hospital parking lots. Words like coming, hiding, and not enough time. While the adults were busy arguing about containment zones and weapons, debating if the undead were sick or cursed, the children were listening. No one paid them any mind. Kids imagine things, right? But this was different. Children who had never met were sharing the same sentences. They drew the same cryptic symbols, circles inside triangles, towers under black skies, something tall enough to blot out the stars. When parents tried to comfort them, the kids asked questions that sounded less like fear and more like preparation. Where will we go if the skies stop being safe? What sound does the earth make when it breaks? The dead kept coming, but they never harmed a child. They would step around them, sometimes stopping to lower their heads, almost as if in relief. It was a pediatric nurse named Maribel who finally saw the pattern. She noticed that whenever the dead passed by her hospital ward, all the children would stop crying. They'd become completely still, their faces locked in concentration. One day, a little girl with a shaved head from chemotherapy reached up to her. "Can you write something down for me?" she asked. "The woman outside says the adults won't believe this part later." Maribel was terrified, but she grabbed a notepad and a pen. She listened as the girl spoke, translating the silent words of the dead. She wrote about a sound beneath the ground, a vibration older than cities, something waking not from death, but from waiting. The girl explained that the dead weren't returning because of a virus or a curse. They were returning because whatever was coming had disrupted the line between living and gone. It was pulling memories loose and stitching them back into bodies that could walk. The dead weren't invading, they were recruiting, trying to speak through the only mind still open enough to hear past the fear. When Maribel showed her notes to the doctors, they told her she needed rest. They sent the children home or to crowded shelters. But the shelters were a disaster. Adults filled them with more noise, shouting orders and blasting news reports. The children covered their ears, not because they were scared, but because the voices of the dead were being drowned out. So, some kids started sneaking out at night. They would find a quiet place to sit near the slow-moving figures and just listen. They learned that the dead weren't one entity, but many. Teachers, farmers, drivers, singers, all repeating versions of the same message. The sky had learned to look back. Something vast and patient had noticed humanity, the same way we might notice an anthill we built our house on. The dead remember this happening before, in older ages, when they had different names for the same mistake. The children asked why the adults couldn't hear. The dead explained it was because adults are trained to filter reality, to survive by ignoring anything that doesn't fit inside their established rules. And the thing that was coming had no rules. Soon, the children began to organize. In small, quiet groups, they shared what they heard, mapping where the voices were strongest. They discovered the messages were clearest near old places, libraries, ruins, empty theaters, anywhere stories had been gathered. The dead followed them, not as guards, but as witnesses. When the military tried to intervene, their machines would fail. Screens flickered, and radios filled with static that sounded eerily like breathing. The turning point came when a boy named Nur spoke to the world. His older sister helped him stand in front of a stolen news camera and promised not to interrupt. Nur calmly explained that the dead were trying to warn us. They weren't warning us about something that kills bodies, but something that replaces meaning, something that feeds on our attention and our certainty, growing stronger the more we try to define it. The dead had already lost their chance to stop it once before. But they remembered how it ended, with cities still standing, but empty of purpose, people alive, but unable to feel why. He said children could hear the message because they hadn't yet decided what reality was allowed to be. The broadcast cut out, but not before millions had heard a child speak without a trace of fear. And in that moment, something shifted. Not everywhere, but enough. Teachers turned off their projectors. Parents sat down in silence. World leaders paused their briefings. In the quiet, some adults began to hear it too. Not voices, but impressions. Sudden moments of understanding that didn't feel like their own thoughts. The dead began to slow down, some even sitting as if exhausted. The children said they were relieved. The message was finally getting through. When the thing in the sky finally revealed itself, it wasn't a monster or a spaceship. It was a distortion, a pressure that bent probability and erased nuance. But humanity didn't scream or attack it. Guided by the children who translated the warnings of the dead, we listened. We made different choices. We built smaller cities, embraced quieter nights, and shared stories instead of shouting them. One by one, the dead lay down where they stood, their faces peaceful. Their task was complete. Children cried, not from fear, but because they finally understood what it meant to say goodbye. Years later, when we told the story, we didn't call it an apocalypse. We called it a lesson. We taught our children not that they had saved the world, but that they had been the first to hear it. And sometimes, when the night is very still, the kids will ask if the dead are still talking. And we answer honestly, we don't know, but we're listening now, just in case. Thanks for watching.